And hello, everybody. We are now streaming on Facebook. If you're watching us, it is noon on February, oh my goodness, 18th. I don't have my glasses on, 2025. And this is our legislative briefing for the state of Texas. And I'm going to begin our presentation in a moment here. Just let everybody log in at the top of the hour. So as everybody is logging in, I will go slowly through the next few slides, just letting you know what we're going to be doing today. So my name is Lisa Salberg. I'm the founder and CEO of the Hypertrophic Cardiomyopathy Association. We're going to tell you a little bit about the organization and what we have planned over the next 30 minutes. This will be a very quick moving, data-rich 30 minutes. Feel free to replay this at any time from our YouTube channel or our Facebook stream, where you can rewatch this. If you're a legislator or legislative aide in the state of Texas and you're watching this after the original air date and you have any questions, you can email us at any time or set up an appointment with Julie. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we are, what we're doing, and then we're going to hear from Dr. Sharif Naga, a Texas native or resident, and he will talk to us about the disease states that we are looking for in our legislative initiatives that we're moving forward throughout the country. I'm going to talk a little bit about the details of this draft legislation that we have available for your perusal. Then we're going to hear from Amy Blair about her personal experience. And then I'm going to kind of tie up that story as to exactly why we're asking for what we're asking for. And then we're going to hear from Noah, who's going to talk to us about the work that his organization does in creating model solutions for state governments around the country. So that's kind of a run through of what we're going to be doing over the next 30 minutes. So who is the Hypertrophic Cardiomyopathy Association and why are we in your inbox? So we were founded in 1996 as a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And we are the preeminent organization improving the lives of those with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy and other thick heart muscle disorders, preventing untimely death and advancing global understanding. We do this through providing educational opportunities to patients, families, and the medical community about HCM and other thick hearts. And we have been doing this work for nearly 30 years, serving over 25,000 families worldwide. So let's focus on the United States and let's be even more specific and look at Texas. About 2 years ago, the HCMA organized a state report card, and we are looking for issues that are related to sudden cardiac arrest preparedness, as well as surveillance for those who are at risk for diseases that can cause sudden cardiac arrest. And we also want patients to have access to medications without undue burden of insurance policy regulations that make it harder for them to access care. And we also want to provide our Center of Excellence care model within the state. So thank you to the state of Texas for again and in perpetuity recognizing HCM Awareness Day. Yay, Texas. You've got some great AED laws in Texas, probably because you are the home of the American Heart Association and you've listened to their messaging very carefully. So thank you for that. We do have some asks of the state of Texas in regards to safe delivery of medications and some other issues that are not related to our talk today, but we can continue these conversations with you all at a later date. Today, we want to talk about HCM Awareness Day and what we are looking for in terms of legislative move in the state of Texas. So thanks again to Texas. You are in good company. As you can see, our list is growing. Every year, we have more states recognizing HCM Awareness Day by law, proclamation, or resolution. So thanks to all who have contributed thus far. We got lots of bling on the wall now and more to come. So thank you. Now we are going to hear about the disease states that can cause sudden cardiac arrest and other cardiac complications in the young. And we're going to hear from an HCMA recognized Center of Excellence director, Dr. Sharif Naga, who is with Houston Methodist DeBakey Heart and Vascular Center in a little place called Houston. Good morning, Dr. Naga. I am handing over the microphone to you. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Ms. Lisa. So let's talk about the diseases that you've heard about that can cause sudden cardiac death. One of the most common, in fact, the most common disease of the group that we will talk about today in patients with thick hearts is hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. In this condition, as you look into the bottom panel, you will see that the heart has a thick muscle, And that thick muscle encroaches on the cavity of the heart, which is shown in the dark brown color. As a result, patients with this heart have a small amount of blood filling the ventricle, and therefore a small amount of blood that makes it to the rest of the body. And they are also having a stiff heart muscle. These conditions end up causing their symptoms. It's the most common inherited disorder, about 1 in 250 patients. In the United States only, the estimated number of patients with this disease is 1.3 million. And if you take a more careful look at how many have been diagnosed, it's only 150,000. The risk of sudden cardiac death is very high in patients with this condition, and it is the most common cause of sudden death in young patients. Also, patients at different age groups, unfortunately, it can still happen in the very young age. They can have symptoms related to heart failure, and they can also suffer stroke with its consequences. As you notice on that slide, it's not the only genetic or congenital heart disease, but these other diseases as well can be screened for, as we will show. And so the next slide, that shows the spectrum of disease with its prevalence in the state of Texas. You can see that the majority are patients with what we call hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, what we just talked about in some detail. But there are many other conditions. Sometimes they involve the different chambers of the heart. Sometimes they involve the vessel that carries blood away from the heart. Sometimes it's rhythm abnormalities that develop in a heart that looks normal, but that can have findings on the electrocardiogram that points to their presence, and then conditions which patients are born with and still put them at a higher risk for sudden death. So what do patients report? Typically, when a physician sees a patient where there is a suspicion of this disease or any of the other diseases, the physician goes to obtain a careful family history. Sometimes the patient is referred because a murmur has been noticed, and that triggers the whole step process. In comparison to patients who feel good and may only have a heart murmur, a good number of patients can report shortness of breath, being aware of their heartbeats, chest pain, and sometimes described as fullness or pressure. Usually patients report some degree of fatigue, lightheadedness, or brain fog, and in more serious symptoms include feeling like about to pass out or actually passing out. The fact that someone has no symptoms does not mean they do not have the disease, and that's something we want to come back to as we talk about the screening efforts. The complications of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy and the other genetic heart diseases include sudden cardiac death, rhythm problems with the heart. Sometimes the heart beats too fast, and sometimes it beats too slow. Sometimes the symptoms develop at a younger age, and these can be life-limiting symptoms, so the patient cannot enjoy not just their social life, but they cannot also function in a work environment. Patients are at a higher risk for developing infections on the heart valves, and then progressive heart failure symptoms that eventually will lead to more advanced treatments, including heart transplantation. It would be great if physicians are able to have the tools to get to diagnose these patients before we reach these advanced stages, because then something can be done. The next step. So if we were to put big symptoms that could be life-threatening or limiting to someone's productivity, we would say sudden cardiac death. And here, the implantable cardioversion defibrillators have brought about a major impact in decreasing the risk of sudden death in this patient population who have a higher risk for sudden death. Another serious group of symptoms are those related to heart failure, typically short of breath, tired, leg swelling, And these can be managed with medications, with surgery, and advanced cases with cardiac transplantation. A third group of patients have rhythm problems with something called atrial fibrillation, and that can lead to a stroke, and they can be managed with medications, blood thinners, we call them anticoagulants, and then some procedures to get rid of the rhythm abnormalities. Once we see a patient with any of the above symptoms or a suspicion that they may have these conditions, we want to screen other family members. As we started earlier, we said that obtaining a careful family history is very important for these diseases because it's transmitted from generation to generation. And the problem happens to be in one of the proteins that make up the heart muscle. So family history is important. It's what we call an autosomal dominant inheritance, which means each of the children of a patient with this condition has a 50-50 chance of having the disease. And of course, if that child is affected, then they can transmit it to their children and so on. I'm done with that section, and Ms. Lisa will take it over. Thank you.
Sorry, I was a little preemptive with that slide change. Thank you, Dr. Naga. Okay. So what it is that we are seeking to do here in the state of Texas is what we have done in a few other states in legislative language that is in process right now, and in practicality in the state of New Jersey for a number of years now, for over about 5 years, actually 7 years. We have had the well child inclusion aspect in our law here, which is proven to be quite effective. So what are we looking to do? The pre-participation screening physical examination that student athletes are required to have in Texas right now needs to be simplified and improved upon, as well as having those same questions asked of all children, not just athletic children. We know that of those who die suddenly and unexpectedly from HCM under the age of 24, we know the athletes are predominantly African American and predominantly male. And we know that these diseases that can cause sudden cardiac arrest in the young are present in that population. However, when you look at all comers, all young people under the age of 24 who are dying from these disease states, 80% are not athletes and 20% are athletes. So it only makes sense to look at all children equally under the law to ensure that every child has an opportunity to get diagnosed and every family has an opportunity to be treated. So we wish to include the pre-participation screening questions that were previously reserved for student athletes to all children, and to give the opportunity to the parent and the chosen healthcare provider to identify what might be available to do next for an individual family. Some may need checkups with cardiologists, some may need to meet a genetic counselor, some may need MRI, some may need CT scans. There are different diseases that require different levels of surveillance. So this law allows a parent and their healthcare provider to decide what step is right for them next. We want to develop professional development tools to assist physicians in understanding what these diseases are and knowing how to proceed when the diagnosis is suspected. We want to improve the student athlete pre-participation screening physical to keep updated on a regular basis and make sure that we are using a similar form for the entire state and that we don't have individual school district rules allowing changes to that form. And we want to make sure that our AED and CPR training are top notch all the way around. I think you're doing really well in Texas in this particular space. There might be a couple of opportunities for improvement, but generally speaking, bravo, Texas, you're doing a good job. So what do we know about the legislation that we wish to pass? We know that everybody has a heart. This is a bipartisan issue. No matter what your political affiliation, we're damn sure you've got a heart. So we want to make sure that it's safe and healthy. This is a proactive piece of legislation, not reactive. We want to get to families in time. We want to limit the cost of diagnostic procedures to those who are flagged and have reason to use these types of modalities, including imaging modalities and genetic screenings. We know there are much higher costs that could be averted in the event somebody suffers a cardiac arrest, has a neuro injury, and a lifetime neurologic deficit. We can get in front of these diseases and we can minimize the impact of disease by proper management, and we can save lives with implantable defibrillators and prompt evaluation of those who have more advanced forms of heart failure. We want to promote cardiac wellness overall for all children, not just for athletes, not just for non-athletes, for every child. We know the proof is working here in New Jersey. We have an increase in surveillance and surveillance rates, and that's the ability to identify those who are at risk. And we have a decrease in our sudden cardiac arrest numbers. These are good numbers to see going down. So let's get the diagnostics up so we can get people to care and we have less tragedies in schools and athletic fields. The model language that we are utilizing has been vetted through the American Heart Association, and they give us their support of this legislation. And we're happy to bring in the state level individuals from those organizations, which you also respect, as do we. And the American Heart Association has been a partner with us for many years now, and they are a partner in their support of this particular legislation. So thank you to them. We want to improve life-saving abilities of healthcare providers to identify children with cardiac disorders, both genetic and congenital, early enough. These, again, are bipartisan issues. We are not looking to mandate any particular test. We are looking to facilitate a conversation between parent and healthcare provider that will give them the tools and power to maybe save a life in time. The American Academy of Pediatrics has published on this matter, and they have placed a call to action about 2-3 years ago that states we need to do a better job of surveilling our children's hearts and getting them into care in a timely manner. And again, our language has been vetted through AHA. Now we are going to hear about a real life story of one family that I think you will agree it would have been really great if we asked some additional questions 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and maybe Amy Blair's story would be a little different today. Amy, please tell us about Jillian.
Oh, thank you so much, Lisa. So 3 years ago this month, I walked in with Jillian to our primary care physician's office and for her meningitis shot to have her well child check as she was going to be a senior this upcoming year. And when the doctor placed her stethoscope on Jill's chest, she turned around to me and she said, "When did Jill get this heart murmur?" And I replied, "Jill doesn't have a heart murmur." A month later, we were in having an echo, and we pretty much skipped anything that was mild or moderate, and the doctors were using terms as severe and obstructed. From that time, 10 days later, we were over in specialists in Omaha, where we were having MRIs, cardiac MRIs. We were having stress tests and stress echoes, and they were starting to piece together exactly the puzzle that was going on with Jill's heart. We went home from there, and a couple of weeks later, we were waiting for her last piece of the puzzle to be given to us, which was her genetic testing. And on April 21st, it came through. I waited for her to come home. They had called me. She came home, walked in the door. I said, "Jill, you tested positive for something called the MYBPC3 gene, and it does cause HCM." She was like, "I'm not surprised to hear that. We were kind of prepared for that at that moment." It was a Thursday afternoon. I said, "On Monday, the doctors are going to call us and we're going to have a plan in place. We're going to go ahead and, get this tackled." Jill ran up our living room stairs, turned the corner into her bedroom to get undressed. And while she was undressing, she suffered a cardiac arrest and she died on her bedroom floor. 64 days from February 16th to April 21st was what the time frame that we had, that we found out that we had a problem with Jillian. Prior to that, I did have red flags in my family. My brother John had been diagnosed with heart valve problems and an enlarged heart. He had died after complications of this valve problem. His son, Daniel, my nephew, had had 2 myectomies. But during that time, it was years ago, he was 14 and 30 when he had them done. We were told things like, it's a male-to-male transfer gene. Maybe it came from the mother's side. There were times where I had cousins, who had died I had a cousin who died at the age of 36, and people would make excuses. He was a larger person. uncles and aunts who had died early, but they would say, they died, they had a hard life. We always made excuses in our families for reasons why our family were dropping dead of sudden cardiac arrests. In 2021, my father suffered a cardiac arrest. He was 91. He was playing cards and drinking beer with his buddies, and he went down. Even if it had been, even at 2021, 1 year prior to Jill's diagnosis, if I had been asked the right questions at the right times by those doctors when I was coming in every year for her well child check, have you guys had a sudden cardiac arrest? Do you have anybody who has had it? My nephew had a defibrillator. It had went off. It had saved his life. There were just moments where we just had them all through the years. As a busy mom, I had kind of, glossed over that these things were happening in my family. I had been checked out, was told I had AFib, but everything was okay. But had I been asked on each child at their well child check, do you have these things? We may have been able to get it earlier for Jill. Everybody asks me, what killed Jill? Why did she have to die? And I say all the time, it was bad timing. Had we just had a month, a year, any more extra time to get that earlier diagnosis, instead of walking into a heart murmur and getting the word severe and obstructed, we may have been able to have time to get her that ICD to be able to save her life. Everybody says to me, these sudden cardiac arrests are rare. You're not, it's not rare when it happens to your family. And when you look at your family and realize it's been happening for generations, and now we are at the peak where we have got the knowledge, we've got the medications, we have got everything and the ability to be able to get these people help. We just need to find the patients. And so if we could have questions that are as every single child's well child check. My kid was not an athlete. I did not create any athletes. I created artists. If we could find out immediately, when they're 12 and 13, before it gets to that point when they're severe, to save their lives and keep people intact, that is my goal. And honestly, we love Texas. In 2017, we went to San Antonio and Houston, had an amazing time. Jill, we all came back with cowboy hats, except for Jill. She wanted a sombrero. We have the best memories of our family vacation in Texas. We enjoyed every single minute of it. So thanks, Texas, for giving us those great memories. And, you guys are doing a great job. I'd love to see more so that we can continue to keep your guys' all families intact. Thanks.
Sorry about that. Amy, thank you for sharing your beautiful story with us of Jillian's life, as well as the tragedy of her passing. We wish that we could have done more in time, but her legacy will live on through your work, and we thank you for that. We are now going to hear from Noah, who's going to talk to us about the model solution that HCMA has created to help Texas be prepared for cardiac emergencies and find these children in time. Noah.
Well, Amy, I just couldn't be more thankful for sharing your story. I had to go off camera for a minute for the emotions there. And Dr. Naga as well, Lisa. I've had the pleasure of working with state legislators across the 50 states for the past 23 years, just sharing model solutions and best practices, things that we think make a lot of sense. We try to look for things that'll get unanimous votes and that everyone can get behind. Also, full disclosure, volunteering my time for HCMA because of a colleague that was lost. And that's how I heard about HCMA and doing what we can to help where we can. I know that, well, first of all, this legislation went through some extensive review over the legislative interim with a lot of people that too many to thank. Really appreciate the support of the American Heart Association. I know there's a lot of pediatricians that are also very supportive, and we appreciate that. But Texas, Virginia has already introduced this legislation, and it passed unanimously through the Senate. It's over in the House, and it's working its way through to final passage over there. Maryland has also introduced legislation. We'd love to get a bill introduced in Texas. I believe there's an upcoming introduction deadline in mid-March, I think the 14th. And so I think there's still time to get a bill introduced and working through the process. And you have our full commitment to work throughout that process to assure that that legislation receives incredible support from the HCMA community. And anything that you need throughout the process, we would be happy to assist with. Yep, on the next slide there. Yep, sorry, just back one. Yep. So if you are interested as a legislator in sponsoring the Children's Cardiac Safety Act, you can email Julie, whose information is there. Also, I'd be happy to talk with you, and we'd be happy to share stories from other states and the community. If you are living in Texas and are a supporter and would like to share the model legislation with your House and Senate members following this session, we will send out, Julie will send out, I believe, some information that will allow you to find out who your members are in case you don't know their contact information, so you can reach out and share the model legislation. But again, just couldn't be more thankful for all of the panelists today, all the supporters online, especially the legislators out there that are sponsoring these bills to make a difference in children's lives throughout the country.
No, thank you so much. And for an appointment with Julie, you can scan the code here, or you can email Julie at 4hcm.org, and she'll be more than happy to schedule a time for your member, yourself, your staff, or whoever you need us to talk to bring this to the next level. And we are more than happy to set up whatever meetings necessary. I will open for questions at this point. Excuse me. But while I am pausing for questions, I am going to, let's see up there. We don't have anything yet in the Q&A, but I'm going to just do my thank you slide to thank our board, our staff, our volunteers, our partners, and our sponsors, without whom we couldn't do half the work that we do. And to those who are unaware, 8 years ago this month, I received a heart transplant, and my donor's name was Brandy. So I'm only here today because of clinical trials, scientific advances, and the generous donation from a family that was in the moment of grief and chose life in that moment. So if you haven't thought about being an organ donor, please have your conversations with your families and let them know what your wishes are should they ever need to know. And my gratitude goes out to all that are involved in science and research to helping us live longer lives and keeping families whole as long as possible. So I'm going to stop the share and go to Brady Bunch for a moment here. And that way I can see the questions better. And here we are. We don't have any questions in the queue right now. That's why I couldn't find them. They didn't flash up. Okay, so any last moments or any last thoughts from any of our speakers today? We are committed to making this law a reality in every state. Texas, Europe, how can we help you help families? Not hearing any other questions. We're here to answer your questions later if you need to. Thank you for joining us on Facebook, and goodbye on Facebook. And on that, I will close the webinar. Thank you all for joining us today. We appreciate your time and attention and look forward to coming down to Texas for a signing of a law. Thank you all. Bye-bye.